It's the most magical time of the year, and I'm not talking about Christmas. I'm talking about the NFL season. So make sure you're ready with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV. Get the most live NFL games all in one place. Right now, you can save $85 when you bundle NFL Sunday Ticket with YouTube TV. Sign up today at youtubetv.com/Spotify. Device and content restrictions apply. Discount applied to first 4 months of YouTube TV, then $72.99 a month. Ends August 29th. Terms, restrictions, and embargoes apply. No refunds.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
Welcome on in to another edition of Eagles Memories here on the Eagles Pin Pull Network. I'm your host, John Stolnis. I'm a writer for BleedingGreenNation.com and also the host of the Eye on the Enemy podcast. And on this podcast, Eagles Memories, we're on episode 7, taking you through the 2004 Philadelphia Eagles season here 20 years later. We're celebrating the 20th anniversary of that 04 squad that went all the way to the Super Bowl. And this week, we're going to be going through the 2 NFC playoff games that led to their Super Bowl appearance, the divisional round victory against the Vikings, and then, of course, the NFC Championship game against the Atlanta Falcons. But if this is a season that you remember and you haven't listened to any of the other podcasts, make sure that you have subscribed to the Eagles Pin Pull Network, and you can listen to the other episodes 1 through 6, where we have been going through this whole season, playing highlights from some of the games and the big moments from that 2004 season. And that's what we're going to do today here on this episode of the podcast. And starting next week, Eye on the Enemy will be coming back. We're going to start talking about the 2024 Eagles and getting ready for the season, where we'll be previewing games each and every week. But in the weeks leading up to the regular season, we'll just be kind of getting a national perspective on the Birds. So lots of good stuff to get to here on the Eagles Pin Pull Network. Got a lot of other great shows you want to make sure you check out as the season rolls along. But let's get into the guts here of episode 7 of Eagles Memories, and we're going to start off with the NFC divisional round matchup between Donovan McNabb and the Terrell Owens-less Eagles taking on Dante Culpepper, Randy Moss, and the Vikings. Now, with 2 meaningless regular season games and a 2-week wait because of the first round bye, it had been about a month since the Cowboys game that Terrell Owens was injured, the last meaningful game of the regular season for the Eagles. So essentially, the Eagles had not played a meaningful game in a month coming into this game. And a lot of the conversation coming into this playoff game against the Vikings is, would the Eagles be rusty? We heard that a lot coming into the game, and it was making everyone nervous. And we were all asking us, how would the Eagles respond without having Terrell Owens in the mix? The Eagles had not taken the field in a meaningful game without T.O. all season. Would the offense be able to function? If so, how would it function? Who would step up? How would things look differently? What would Andy Reid do? What would Donovan McNabb do without their wide receiving superstar, the guy who we had all come to believe was the missing link? It was a kind of a perilous time going into this playoff game. And the Eagles were favored, even though they didn't have Terrell Owens. They were favored going into this game against the Vikings, but the Vikings were a decent team, if not a great team. The Eagles came in as the number 1 seed, but we were all worried. We were just worried. You know, those 3 straight NFC Championship game losses in a row, the last 2 coming in Philadelphia, simply was weighing on us. I mean, I don't know if you didn't experience that, if you weren't an Eagles fan in 2004 and you hadn't experienced those years before then, it's hard to put into words how much pressure was on this Eagles team to get to the Super Bowl. Because the last couple of times the Eagles got to the Super Bowl, they just kind of waltzed in 2017 with the NFC Championship game against the Vikings, where they blew them out. And then, of course, a couple of years ago when they blew the doors off the Giants and the 49ers to get to the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. they ran through the NFC playoffs pretty easily there, but in the 3 previous seasons, again, coming up short. The idea that this team would not be able to get there again was too terrible to contemplate. And now without Terrell Owens, the guy who we all thought was going to be the key to them winning the Super Bowl, not playing, and it looked like he was, everybody was holding out hope that he would come back, but we knew it wouldn't be for either this playoff game or the next one if they were to get that far. We were all wondering, would they be rusty? Would they be able to function? How would they look without Terrell Owens? And this is not the first time these two teams met. If you listen to one of our earlier episodes, we chronicled the first matchup between the Eagles and the Vikings earlier in the season when they met at Lincoln Financial Field, with the Eagles rolling up a decisive 27-16 win against them on Monday Night Football. Minnesota came into the playoffs struggling. They had lost 4 of their last 5, and they finished the regular season with just an 8-8 record. They were the last team into the dance. However, in the wild card round, they shocked the NFC North division winning Packers by going into Green Bay and winning 31-17. They took a quick 17-0 lead in the first quarter and never looked back. Dante Culpepper threw for 284 yards and 4 touchdowns, with Randy Moss catching 2 of those touchdowns. And Minnesota's defense intercepted Brett Favre 4 times in the game. So they were feeling pretty good coming into Lincoln Financial Field, and they were looking for revenge from the early season loss to the Birds. Coming into this game, though, the reason the Eagles were heavily favored is because no number 1 seed had ever lost to a number 6 seed. Number 1 seeds were 8-0 all time against number 6 seeds in the NFL, and that's exactly what we were looking at here. So as we get into this game, on the Eagles' second drive, they took the lead after marching the ball down the field, leading to a Freddie Mitchell touchdown on a designed rollout from McNabb inside the 5-yard line.
3rd down and goal. McNabb to his right, fires. Touchdown, Mitchell.
You guys do realize what just happened there, don't you, Joe Buck? I'm going to let Joe Buck call that play.
Freddie Mitchell ends up catching the laser line drive throw from Donovan McNabb. And Freddie Mitchell, I guess, in essence, did the reverse Moss from a week ago. And finished it by putting the belt back on. The people's champ.
And after the touchdown, you heard the guys talk about it a little bit there. Mitchell pretending to pull up his pants and strap on a belt, seemingly in response to Randy Moss's touchdown celebration the week before in Lambeau Field, where he pretended to moon the fans. And that's, remember when analyst Joe Buck kind of lost his mind when he did that a little bit, overreacted quite a bit. And you can hear Collinsworth on the call. I don't know if he was needling Joe a little bit after the celebration, but the Birds had a 7-0 lead nonetheless, and Freddie Mitchell did the anti-Randy Moss touchdown celebration. After another stop by the defense, the offense got the ball back with time winding down in the first quarter. And that's when McNabb hooked up on a deep bomb to number 4 receiver Greg Lewis for a big gain, followed by another completion and a touchdown hookup to Brian Westbrook.
McNabb airs it out. Lewis. Greg Lewis. Beat Williams. And they'll mark Lewis at the 21. The Eagles' speediest receiver is good for 53 yards. McNabb with time. Throws and completes it to Pinkston. McNabb 7 of his last 8. On 1st and goal, the pass, Westbrook, touchdown.
What a pretty move by Brian Westbrook on that one. Westbrook looked like he was going to do one of those arrow routes where you go in and come back out, but instead he comes in, out, and back in again. That's a fake, and now you go right back by him. Pretty play.
So the Eagles have a quick 14-0 lead as the second quarter begins. And remember just a minute ago when we were talking about worried about being rusty, worried about being off their game because they'd been a month since they'd played meaningful football? It became clear pretty early on that rust was not going to be an issue, as Donovan McNabb mentioned to his teammates on the sideline. Clearly they had heard the criticism or the question marks leading into this game.
We pretty damn rough them. Hey, somebody living right. Rough.
But credit to the Vikings, they respond with a drive of their own, eventually ending up with a Culpepper touchdown run from 4 yards out.
Culpepper couldn't find anything to his left, so he'll run. Dante Culpepper, and that big body in for the touchdown.
So with a little bit more than 10 minutes left in the first half, the Eagles had a 14-7 lead here in this divisional round matchup. The Eagles got the ball back thanks to a couple of Vikings defensive pass interference calls, moved the ball down to the Minnesota 14, and that is when the fates intervened and showed that today was simply going to be their day. Maybe the bad luck that the Eagles had experienced the last few years, it was not going to come to play today. McNabb hit L.J. Smith for a pass across the middle that Smith took to the 5-yard line before Antoine Winfield put his helmet on the ball and upended Smith. As he did so, the ball flew into the air, into the end zone, about 5 yards deep into the end zone. So in all, it traveled about 10 yards in the air, where it just happened to land in the breadbasket of Freddie Mitchell. As if McNabb was leading Freddie Mitchell across the end zone, the ball deflected right to him, right into the numbers for a touchdown. Just an incredible and bizarre bit of great fortune for the Eagles.
Up by 7, McNabb over the middle. L.J. Smith lost the football into the end zone for a touchdown. Freddie Mitchell in the right place at the right time, and an unbelievable break for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Sometimes you need a little luck in this game. You're going to see L.J. Smith. He's one-on-one on a linebacker. That's a mismatch for the Philadelphia Eagles. He makes a move and gets open. He has a shot to get into the end zone, and Winfield comes in and gets a helmet on the ball, and Freddie Mitchell in the right spot.
I have never seen anything like that in watching football. Have you ever seen one fly forward like that for a touchdown?
That's what Andy Reid's been doing with this time off.
So now the Eagles restore their 2-touchdown lead. It's 21-7 in the middle of the second quarter, thanks to that miracle play. And the first half finished with a strange decision by Vikings coach Mike Tice that ultimately may have cost his team the game. It certainly took away any momentum they might have had going into the locker room. The Vikings embarked on a nice long drive, and they drove down to the Eagles 4, but were stopped by the defense, which left them with a 4th and 4. Tice brought out the field goal unit, but tried to run a fake, and it didn't go well.
And now Farad throws it through the back of the end zone, and the Eagles will take over.
With that incompletion by the punter, or actually by the holder, the Vikings came away with nothing to show for that drive, and both teams went to the locker room with the Eagles up 21-7. The Vikings began the second half with the ball and drove inside the Eagles 35, but Culpepper was intercepted by linebacker Ike Reese in what was probably his biggest play as an Eagle.
Culpepper has it batted up in the air and picked off. That's Reese. And the Minnesota Vikings, who had gone 3 games without a turnover.
Here's Reese here, but here's Javon Curson. They're paying a lot of attention to him, but watch Ike Reese come right this way and actually get blocked on the play, but have the presence of mind to get his hands up, tip it in the air, and make the play. Just a tremendous athletic play that time by Ike Reese.
The first turnover of the game. A fantastic athletic play by Ike Reese.
After the Eagles failed to do anything with the ball following the turnover, Minnesota got it back, but you could feel Culpepper was starting to force the issue. And after not having committed a turnover in their previous 3 games, Culpepper threw another pick inside Eagles territory.
Culpepper over the middle, another interception. It's Trotter right into his gut. Culpepper makes the tackle.
An annoying play followed that, with McNabb hitting Mitchell for what looked like a 35-yard touchdown, but after Mitchell caught the ball at the 10, he tried to stretch to get it into the end zone, but fumbled it at the 1-yard line, and the ball landed out of bounds in the end zone, resulting in a touchback. So 2 turnovers, nothing to show for it, but the Eagles still had a 21-7 lead. The Vikings once again drove the ball inside the Eagles 25, but a huge sack by Brian Dawkins knocked them out of field goal range.
Blitz, Culpepper lost the football, able to get back on top of it, but the ball is all the way back outside the 30, and they are outside field goal range now.
And from that point on, the Eagles pulled away with 2 David Akers field goals in the fourth quarter, pushing it to 27-7 before a late Marcus Robinson touchdown catch with just under 2 minutes gave us the final score, 27-14. It was clear throughout this game that the Eagles were the better team, with only the Mitchell turnover compared to 2 killer interceptions from Culpepper as they were trying to get back into the game. And we got our answer as to how the offense would function without Owens. It looked a lot like the unit that we saw in 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2003. Freddie Mitchell and Greg Lewis stepped up, as did L.J. Smith and Brian Westbrook, of course. McNabb went 21 for 33 for 286 yards and 2 touchdowns, and the offensive line did a phenomenal job protecting him. He was sacked only once on the day. Westbrook had 117 total yards, and McNabb spread the ball around with 7 different players making at least 1 catch. Mitchell had 5 for 65 and that touchdown on the deflected fumble, but also he had the lost fumble and, of course, that miracle snag. Lewis caught 2 for 64. Smith had 4 for 52. Pinkston 3 for 46, and even fullback Josh Perry got into the mix with a 7-yard catch. Now, the offense was not nearly as dynamic without Terrell Owens, but Andy Reid and McNabb were forced to go back to their pre-2004 roots, and for this game, it worked beautifully. Defensively, Trotter and Nate Wayne combined for a sack, and Dawkins and Javon Kearse each had a sack as well. It was a total team victory, and for the 4th straight year, the Eagles would advance to the NFC Championship Game. Now, this is where the real stress started to seep in. The thought of losing a 4th straight NFC Championship game, the 3rd in a row at home, was panic-inducing. I mean, it couldn't happen again, could it? I couldn't imagine the nightmare if the Eagles had lost this game. I was at this game. I was also at the game when at the Rondé Barber NFC Championship game when he intercepted Donovan McNabb and took it to the house. And I really felt like we were going to get redemption in this game. It really, they had to win this game. They had to win it. Because I can't imagine what the city would have been like had they lost. And I wonder too, had they lost this game, what would have happened with Andy Reid? What would have happened with Donovan McNabb? Would there have been major changes to the roster if they had fallen short again? All of these different things were swirling inside our minds as we were getting ready for this game. Because they had looked great before in previous NFC Championship games and laid an egg. Would they do it again? Would they lay another egg on the biggest stage? Now, especially the 4th year in a row, with the pressure on them so much without Terrell Owens, would they be able to do it? It was also a bitterly cold day. There was a big snowstorm that had swept through like the day before, or a couple days before. Wind chills were in the negatives. There were high winds throughout the game, so it was kind of a tough day to throw the football. And the Falcons came in as the best running team in football, with Michael Vick, Warwick Dunn, and TJ Duckett forming a triple-headed monster that was on fire coming into the NFC title game. Warwick Dunn had rushed for 1,106 yards and 9 touchdowns on the season. Vick ran for 902 yards, and Duckett, the bigger bruising running back, had 8 touchdowns and 509 yards on the ground that season. But they did have a couple decent receivers. Peerless Price and tight end Algie Crumpler were their best ones. But this is a game that would be decided on the ground, we thought. Simply, much of it because of the weather. Atlanta finished the season 11-5, winners of the NFC South and the number 2 seed with a bye past the wild card round. In the divisional round, they also had an easy time of things, destroying the St. Louis Rams 47-17 by running for an astounding 327 yards on the ground. 327 yards rushing in their 47-17 win over the Rams. Vick had 119 yards on just 8 carries. Dunn put up 142 yards on 17 carries, and Duckett added another 66 yards. And remember, the Eagles' Achilles heel all season had been stopping the run. although it did get better once they put Jeremiah Trotter at middle linebacker. That worry eased a little bit. But Vic had become the most dynamic running quarterback in the game. The Eagles had beaten him a couple seasons before in 2002 divisional round. No, was it in the wild card round? The divisional round. I'm trying to remember now. But he came to the Vet. It was in the final season of the Vet, so it was 2002, and I guess it was in the divisional round of the playoffs. It was vital that the Eagles not allow him to get outside the pocket and run. It's something they did successfully in that playoff game a couple seasons before, and it was something they were going to have to do again here in the 2004 NFC Championship game. And with the Eagles running a blitz-heavy scheme from Jim Johnson, we wondered, how are they going to do that? How are they going to keep Vic from getting outside the pocket and running around? So as we get into the game here, the wind is whipping. It is a bitterly cold day. And the expectations on this Eagles team could not have been more suffocating. You could feel the crowd was fired up. I was in the crowd. I was there, but we were tense because we knew we were either going to have one of the happiest days of our lives or one of the worst days of our lives. There was no in between once this game was over. So as we get going here, the Eagles force a 3-and-out on the first possession, and on their first trip down the field, they made it all the way to the Atlanta 32-yard line, and David Akers came out to try a field goal. Would have been a 49-yard attempt. Normally, that's a kick David Akers makes without a whole lot of trouble, but because of the ridiculous wind in the stadium, it made really any attempt over 45 yards a virtual coin flip, if not worse. So they tried a fake that didn't end up working. And it became clear early on what the defensive strategy would be on Vic as they started their second possession. They mush rushed him. They made sure that Javon Curse and Derek Burgess kept him inside the pocket, not focusing on rushing the passer, but instead managing the pocket, making sure they had eyes on him the whole time, knowing it would be very difficult for him to throw the football on this day. And actually, one of the things that Jim Johnson did in this game that was really smart is he reversed his ends. He put Javon Curse on the right side, so he could keep Vic in front of him and stop him from running to his left, his preferred direction to run and throw. So they wanted to have their better defensive end because Vic liked to run to his left. If you've got Javon Curse on the right, Vic is more oftentimes going to be running towards Curse if they flip them around, which is what Jim Johnson did. Very smart move, and as you'll hear, it paid dividends. With 6 minutes left in the first quarter, the first big offensive play of the day came with Brian Westbrook taking it from the Eagles 39 all the way down to the Atlanta 26 for a 36-yard gain on the ground. An L.J. Smith completion inside the 5 set up first and goal from the 4, and from there, Dorsey Levens punched it in after it looked like he had been stopped well short of the goal line. But after the pile was moved backwards, it suddenly started moving forward again, shoved in by his teammates in what I think may have been the very first impromptu tush push in Eagles history.
First and goal from the 4. Dorsey Levens stays on his feet and gets it to the 1. And now, with that second effort, touchdown.
Jermaine Mayberry at the right guard position is just going to simply turn his man out, Antoine Lake, on that one, and just create a huge hole up the middle for Dorsey Levens. This has been a very physical drive as the Eagles come back and just run the ball right at the Atlanta Falcons on this one.
What an effort by Levens to get it into the end zone.
So with 4 minutes left in the first, the Eagles were on the board first, leading 7-0, and I think that is just it was so important for them to get on the board first. But for those of us who were at the 2002 NFC title game against the Bucs, a game that saw the Eagles get out to that incredible start with the Brian Mitchell return and the Deuce Staley touchdown run on the second play of the game, nothing was guaranteed. With 10:52 left, the Falcons had a 3rd and 2 from the Eagles. 10:52 left in the second quarter. The Falcons had a 3rd and 2 from the Eagles' 4-yard line after a long drive and a chance to tie the score. But the defense, namely defensive tackle Hollis Thomas, stepped up on Michael Vick.
3rd down and goal. 16th play of the drive. Duckett is split out to the bottom of the screen. Vick with time. Michael Vick won't get there to the 5. He lost yardage. Hollis Thomas. Vick did all he could, but Thomas closed it down in the end.
Well, that's just great containment by everybody involved, not allowing Michael Vick to get outside. They're aggressive enough to make him move. They don't sit back and wait. Hollis Thomas, playing in his first NFC Championship game because of injury, steps up and makes a play here. Good job and good discipline by that defensive front.
The Falcons would kick a field goal to make it 7-3, and on the next possession, McNabb scrambled around in the backfield on a 3rd and 11 to complete a ridiculous pass to Freddie Mitchell. And then on the next play, McNabb hit Greg Lewis for as long a pass as you were going to be able to see in this windswept game.
First down inside Atlanta territory. McNabb going to air it out. Greg Lewis adjusts, makes the catch, and Lewis is down inside the 5. Working on Christian Morton. And a 45-yard completion into the wind, into the arms of Greg Lewis.
And sometimes you got to take shots like this because the wind actually helps Philadelphia in this situation. The wind gets a hold of it. It's underthrown. Greg Lewis sees it. He comes back, and he's able to make the play. The DB never gets turned to see the ball.
And the reason that Christian Morton is in the game is because of the ankle injury to Kevin Mathis, knocking him out of those nickel situations. And for the second straight week now, Greg Lewis with a huge play.
So on 2nd and goal from the 3, McNabb hit one of his favorite targets, tight end Chad Lewis, in the corner of the end zone, and Chad Lewis making the catch with a ridiculous toe tap where it looked like he was out of bounds, but he got both feet in.
McNabb back in the end zone. Lewis, touchdown. So much for having trouble working into the wind.
Well, we'll see what happens here. Chad Lewis going to the corner. He had him right away. He floated this one a little bit. Did he get his feet in? One's in. The second is questionable.
I think you're going to get a challenge on that one.
We already got it.
I mean, usually when you tap that other toe, you see some dirt fly, and I'm not so sure the dirt was flying on that one.
No, I don't think he got it in, Chris. I think he got the left one down there, and then look at the right foot, and it looks like the right toe comes down on the white chalk.
There was something that flew up, but I think it was from his left foot and not his right foot.
Atlanta is challenging the ruling on the field.
So the Eagles now with a 14-3 lead in the second quarter, but the Falcons answer back and begin to move the ball down the field. That's when Brian Dawkins made one of the signature hits of his career on tight end Algie Crumpler on a ball that, to Crumpler's credit, he held on to for a big catch, but it was still a decleater.
First down from just outside the Philadelphia 40. Vick, little pump fake. Now over the middle. Crumpler, what a throw, what a hit, what a catch. Algie Crumpler hung on after getting a vicious blow from Brian Dawkins.
Boy, Algie Crumpler runs routes like a wide receiver, and he catches the ball like a bull. He took a huge shot at the end of that play by Dawkins. But watch the little double move now on Michael Lewis. Turn out, go right back up, and at regular speed, look at the clean hit by Brian Dawkins. Just a great shot. One of those, you'll think about that one later.
And after that hit, Crumpler was a non-factor the rest of the way, which I can't blame him. He got absolutely destroyed by Dawkins. And I really feel like in today's NFL, Dawkins probably would have been flagged for unsportsmanlike conduct for hitting a defenseless receiver, because Crumpler really was kind of a defenseless receiver in that point, at that point. But credit to the Falcons. After that hit, they punched it in from the 10-yard line right after that Dawkins hit.
They could elect to let the game clock wind down to 2 minutes. Instead, they hand to Dunn. And Warwick Dunn is into the end zone. And what an answer by the Atlanta Falcons.
Well, that's just huge, Joe. Yeah, I talked about it a little bit earlier. You had to get some plays from your passing game. They come out on second down. They get the pass to Peerless Price. They get the big gain there to Algie Crumpler, and they come away with a touchdown here right before half.
With the extra point, the two teams went into the locker room with the Eagles up 14-10 and controlling the game, even though it only was a 4-point lead for them. The Eagles then came out of the half and got a David Akers field goal to make it 17-10. And with about 3 minutes left in the third quarter, Vick made his first huge mistake of the game with a pick right to number 20.
Starting from their own 14. Open with a throw, and a pass picked off by Dawkins. Brian Dawkins with the interception. And Dawkins is down to the 10. Crumpler, the intended receiver, and Vick threw it right to Dawkins.
I couldn't tell if Michael Vick slipped on the play or not, but that was just horrendous. I mean, he had a chance to throw this one up over the top and just threw a line bullet. No, he just didn't see him. He never saw Brian Dawkins at all. Threw a shot right in his gut.
I tell you, Chris, it's almost as if he thought Crumpler was going to turn around right there, because otherwise there's no excuse for throwing a ball that flat. It was a good idea. Philadelphia, again, had 10 guys within 7 yards of the line of scrimmage. Take a shot down the field, but you got to get it up in the air.
After that interception, the Eagles would add another field goal to make it 20-10, giving them a 10-point lead that they would take into the fourth quarter. And with a 10-point lead entering the fourth quarter and playing a team that had had difficulty throwing the football, we were feeling pretty good in the stands there. We were starting to party a little bit, but still apprehensive because there were still 15 minutes left to go. The Falcons, on their next possession, were starting to move the ball a little bit, but Derek Burgess notched his third sack of the day on Vick, which forced them into a 2nd and 3rd down and long situation and ultimately a punt.
Vick keeps it. Burgess in his way, and Burgess makes a fantastic play. The 4th sack of the day for this Philadelphia defense.
Well, they have basically been forced because Javon Curse is on the other side of the field. The defensive move Jim Johnson made, they're going to put Derek Burgess on the backside. And because they haven't been able to hurt him with that cutback run, Burgess and Curse on the bootleg has been able to sit out there and make those plays time after time.
Well, they got Burgess early in the game the first time they ran the boot his way, but since that time, he's shown great discipline in making plays and not allowing Vick to make the corner.
So here are the Eagles with a 10-point lead. They have the ball with 14 minutes left from their own 20. They lead 20-10, and they embarked on the drive that would send them to the Super Bowl. One of those fourth quarter ice the clock type drives that ultimately ended up in a touchdown. To this point in the game, McNabb had completed 68% of his passes with a 107.6 passer rating, all of it without TO. In the previous 3 NFC Championship games, McNabb had a 53.5% completion percentage, 1 touchdown, and 5 interceptions for a 50.5 rating. McNabb, in the 3 previous NFC Championship games, turned the ball over a lot. He was not sharp in any of those 3 games. In this NFC Championship game, he was sharp, and he was about to masterfully lead this team down the field to ice the game and send them to the Super Bowl. On 3rd and goal from the 2, with 3 minutes left, having soaked up about 7 minutes of game clock, McNabb and Chad Lewis dialed up the same play that resulted in a score earlier in the game.
You can just feel this crowd just about to break loose.
2nd down and goal. McNabb rolls, throws. Westbrook down to the 2. 3rd and goal.
Well, for the Philadelphia Eagles, now 1 play away, and Jeffrey Lurie knows it. If they can convert this into a touchdown, you're going to see pandemonium in a stadium like maybe you've never seen it before.
They flipped the Brian Westbrook switch at halftime. Only 6 touches in the first half. 14 in this second half. 10 carries, 4 catches, and a total of 79 yards. 3rd and goal. Play action. Lewis. Touchdown, and they will celebrate.
Chad Lewis would say on the NFL Films recap of this game that he had broken his foot, was telling his teammates on the sideline, "I broke my foot," on the catch because he had twisted it underneath him as he made the catch. But in that moment, he didn't really care. He would miss the Super Bowl, but I think it was probably the happiest injury that he had ever experienced. And now the party was on. The Eagles were up 27-10 with 3 minutes left. They were going to the Super Bowl. The Falcons got the ball back, but we didn't care. It was party time in the stands. We were freezing. We couldn't feel our feet. We couldn't feel our faces. But we all felt good because finally the Eagles were going to go to the Super Bowl. Why couldn't they have done this any of the 3 times before? It seemed so easy, this game. They really did control this game the whole time. And even more impressive, they had done it without Terrell Owens, something McNabb told his teammates in the week leading up to the game that they could do. And we saw the brilliance of Andy Reid in these two games as well. A masterpiece by what we are finding out is one of the greatest head coaches in NFL history, and a quarterback that had been outgunned in his previous two home losses. Really, Reid and McNabb were largely responsible for the previous two NFC Championship Game losses. The defense pitched a shutout in the second half, and as the game wound down, Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, and Chris Collinsworth on the Fox team put it all in perspective for Eagles fans.
And as we come back to the booth, you throw it out there, you look back on this season, the Philadelphia Eagles were the best team in the NFC. They were the #1 seed. They rested their players down the stretch. Reid took on the criticism for that, and they have really played well this postseason. It looks like they're finally over the hump.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I know that they've done it without a guy who really helped them throughout the season, and that guy being Terrell Owens. But I think the fact that they were able to go out here today and play the way that they have in what appears to be a victory and do it without Terrell Owens, I think validates a lot of these current players that are on this team.
And I think it makes it even more special for Donovan McNabb, because there was so much credit given to Terrell Owens, and basically his thought was, hey, you guys forget we ran this offense before. We were pretty good. But I just can't help but think back to Steve Young. And when he did the whole thing about taking the monkey off of his back because of all the Super Bowls that Joe Montana had won. And for Donovan McNabb, it has to be that same feeling right now that finally that monkey's been lifted off his back and he's going to the Super Bowl.
He was 3 for 3 on that last drive on third down. Overall, the Eagles today 7 of 13 on third down. So when he's had to make a play, Donovan McNabb, who during the week said, throw it all on my shoulders, I'll take on all the pressure. He has stepped up and done it for the Eagles this evening.
So the Eagles had done it. They were going to the Super Bowl, and Reid, who never gave the fans anything in terms of emotion or personality, let a little bit of it loose in the post-game interview on the field when he let it slip that he thought Owens would be ready to play in the Super Bowl. And of course, that would end up being the big story for the 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl, because of course he did, and he turned in one of the most heroic performances in NFL Super Bowl history. McNabb finished with a 111.1 passer rating in this game, 17 of 26 for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. Westbrook ran for 96 yards and had 5 catches for 39 yards. And once again, McNabb spread the ball around. But the star of the game was Jim Johnson and the defense, who put on a clinic on Michael Vick, refusing to allow him any room to operate and shutting down the high-powered Atlanta running game on this day. Vick struggled to throw the ball without the ability to run around with it, making the Falcons one-dimensional and eminently beatable. Dawkins had that huge hit and an interception. Burgess had 2 sacks, and they held Atlanta to just 99 yards on the ground 1 week after they had rushed for more than 300. The Eagles were going to the Super Bowl. They had finally, on their 4th try, their 3rd straight at home, beaten a team that they were supposed to beat, and won the NFC Championship game. And now we would have 2 weeks to think about nothing else of whether Terrell Owens would be ready to play in this game. So, like I mentioned, at the end of the season here, we're going to dive into, I'll do an Eagles memories on the 2004 Super Bowl against the New England Patriots. We'll recap the weeks leading up to it, the game, and then we'll talk a little bit about the aftermath on that episode of the podcast. And I really hope you've enjoyed kind of taking this stretching our legs down memory lane these last couple of months as we've been looking back at the 2004 Eagles season. A lot of great memories from this season, a season that a lot of us will never forget here at the 20th anniversary of this remarkable season. It's been a lot of fun chronicling it with you, and now I'm looking forward to jumping in and starting these Eye on the Enemy podcasts every week as we now get ready for the 2024 Eagles season. The Eagles finishing up their preseason game against the Ravens as I'm recording this tonight. So make sure you get all the analysis from everybody here at the Eagles Pinpull Network on the preseason game, training camp, and as we get ramped up for the regular season, all of the ins and outs of this Eagles team that looks like they're going to be a pretty good team here in 2024. That's going to do it for Eagles Memories. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week when we transition to Eye on the Enemy.